This is literally what we just said, right? The story kind of unfolds. It's not all put together. I'm trying to convince.
Yes, often.
I'm trying to convince Moon, all of the ladies of my campaign. I don't know why. Although it's because Paladins already runs the ladies. It's because Paladin's already trying to run a game, and Brett has made it pretty clear, like, no. Because that fucker still owes me a Persona campaign. Don't you think I'd let you forget? I will never fucking forget that you dumped that campaign before we started. I know you. Anyway.
Yeah,
It's fine. I'm not hurt still.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, so the three people who typically do not run campaigns in my specific campaign, the ladies, I've been trying to convince to run. And a lot of, pretty common recurring things is like, I don't know how to have all that stuff ready. And the thing I keep trying to explain is like, you don't. I ran I think I talked about it. One of my players like going into the weird Borderlands vault, like mirror dimension thing. I think I brought that on podcast. I literally just let that rip to her that was all improv, This is like a departure from what we were talking about. But like the only notes I had for the meta vault was
departure.
True. The only notes I had for the meta vault was the little portals in the forest that led to the vault were holes in the vault that you could like pop in through, what it looked like, what was at the end of it, and the like spider robot sentries. But all of the actions that they took, that was all improv. That's just what makes the most interesting, wibbly wobbly, timey wimey, but still logical mindfuck of a scenario. And, fair enough. She was like, bro, there ain't no way. And I'm like, no, it's true. Like, you just kind of like, once you hit a wave, right? And you're doing the improv thing and you're sort of bouncing back and forth, it kind of just starts to come natural, like your brain just kind of kicks into a mode and you go, okay, this, and then this, yes, and this, no, but this, yes, and this.
Yes. I think the secret, yes, you are improving in the sense that you did not write specific notes down about that dream sequence-esque moment. You didn't have an outline for how it was going to go down. But you're not totally improving in the sense that you have given yourself a scaffolding to which you can easily build upon.
That's true.
Right? The secret is that to be able to rip the improv when you're running a game is you give yourself a very strong foundation, and that foundation is solid enough that you can build anything you want on top of it very quickly. I think Stars Without Number actually says something about this, I want to say. But it's the idea that you're not it's like you're not ripping entirely off the dome. You are ripping off the dome, but you're ripping off the dome. I'm trying to think of like an analogy here to.
You're like, no, I get what you're saying. You're ripping off the dome, but you have set yourself up with frameworks, right? You have the lines. You can't go past this or past this line.
Okay, here we go. Okay. We're gonna do the artistic analogy.
The lens.
We're gonna do the artistic analogy here.
Oh boy. So wait, the artistic analogy, not the fighting game analogy, not the sex analogy, the artistic analogy.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sure I could. Would you like me to turn it into a fighting game analogy? I could think about one.
Yes. I actually want a fighting game analogy on this.
Okay, fine. Okay. What's the fighting game analogy? The fighting game analogy is pretty easy. You know all of your character's normals, right? You know your basic buttons. You know what your special attacks. Yeah, it's actually not that hard. You know what your special attacks do. When you're in an actual match, you're chaining things together, whether it be in a combo or just general neutral play. I'm sorry if I'm getting a little too terminology here. you're using that basic knowledge that you pre-established, which is what do all my normal buttons do and what do my special attacks do. Those are the first things you figure out, and then when you get into a match, you rip them out as you need. And then as you get more experienced, you will start to memorize combos and such. But then what starts to happen is those combos become part of your foundation, and you know when to rip out the right combo when you need it. Bringing this back to the GMing analogy, you build that GMing muscle where you know when to pull from your notes and utilize your notes information, and when you need to throw out just some basic normals, if you will, some basic information. It's establishing a control scheme, establishing a basic understanding. And if you get really good at it, you can kind of just go on autopilot in a sense. And I don't mean autopilot in the sense that you're not paying attention or not thinking, but autopilot in like you're just kind of, you're going. You're in a mode.
So really, I've talked in spades about how much of my last campaign was improv, because I would do like 5 minutes of prep before session and go,
yeah,
this is 20 minutes worth of shit. I got to get real creative real fast. I sort of crash coursed my way into being good at improv because I just was so unprepared all the time.
Yeah.
Like almost up until the end of the campaign that I built that muscle, which should have taken probably double the time.
I mean, not
because I had to use it so much. Well, and now that I'm running this game, I'm doing the opposite, where I'm writing so much shit down to build the other muscle of taking notes and doing actual real prep.
Yes. To bring it back to the analogy space, it's, if you ever watch, and I know a lot of people don't do this, but if you ever watch a stream of a professional fighting game player and or someone who's just played them for a very long time, there's a kind of, especially if they're facing a player who's not super good, there's like an autopilot mode they get into where they're almost not paying attention to the game because they know. I'm really trying to avoid getting into the really technical terminology. I'm trying to say this without getting into the weeds that nobody cares about. Mm-hmm. They know the button combinations, if you will, to shut down a lot of the things that people are going to come at them with. They know if I do X and Y and then Z, most players are going to respond with A and then B. And then once they get to B, I can do Z and then Z squared. And then I'll have them in a trap and then I'll just combo them when they're dead. Like there's this scaffolding that is so strong. They know how to follow into the next step almost instinctively. The GM equivalent being, I know if I put this in front of my players and then I tell them to do X and then I tell them to do Y, they're going to respond with operations A and then B and then C, probably in that order. Maybe B and C will get flipped around, and if they do, I can just slightly adjust what I had planned, but most of the time it's going to be A and then B and then C because I've run enough games that I just have that muscle trained. And that's essentially what that improv vibe is. I have that muscle trained. You're going to do this. I'm going to respond with this. You're going to respond with this. I'm going to respond with this. Like there's just a flow, and it seems like that's not how it works if you're not used to GMing. But human beings in general, we have these certain patterns we hit that once you get a vibe for the patterns, you could just see them. Like, I don't know how else to put it. You see the patterns, you know?
No, I mean, I totally agree. For me, this is not fighting games. For me, this is Souls games, any Soulsborne like, because I'm just so used to the ebb and flow of the system, right? That you can just sort of turn half your brain off and do other things. This is why I play Souls games. This is an odd thing to say. This is why I play Souls games during, like, while I'm playing in people's campaigns, because it requires just enough brain power for me, for my ADHD to like calm down But as Josh can attest to, I'm often the most vocal person in any party who's actively solving complex problems while I'm doing this.
I mean, yes, true. You can bring that analogy to a lot of video games, to be honest. It's pretty... The art analogy I was gonna say is you set up your easel in a nice comfortable spot and you have all of your supplies, your paints and your charcoals and your pencils and your pastels, and everything's laid out nicely on the table, and you don't necessarily know what you're gonna draw, but you have all this stuff set up. So once you get going, you're gonna just start grabbing stuff and being like, oh, I throw a little bit of this here and throw a little of this here. This would be good with some blue, a little green on this corner, drop some red down here. Like, it's a practice thing.
You've optimized the workflow, so to speak.
Something like that, yeah. And GMing is similar in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
because
I mean,
GMing is
really
like
is.
It is a creative, artistic endeavor. It doesn't necessarily always feel like it, but that's at its core, that's what it is.
I mean, I think it is, right? People are like, oh, when you're a GM, you're not a writer. And that's sort of true, right? You're not a writer insofar as you're not an author. You're not writing a story for your players to like walk down linearly.
Yeah, you're not a standard writer in the default sense.
You are a writer. Writing characters, consistent ones that either do or do not progress the plot, knowing the difference of what those are, building villains, creating storylines that the players may or not follow, and then having to be able to switch on the dime and start writing a new branch as it's being written. Those are writing skills. Like, there's really no way about it. No other way about it, sorry. So you are a writer, and it you know, like everything, like Josh said, it is a muscle. It's fascinating.
Yes. It is yeah. It's a muscle, yes. In the way that, you know, you train a... If you want to go further with the muscle analogy, to build muscle, you have to destroy your muscle so that it grows back better and stronger the second time, or the next time, I should say. And in a GMing sense, you have to, you know, destroy your soul a little bit so it grows back stronger.
Well, that is true. You do need to be bad at GMing to get good at GMing, for sure.
You do, yes.
You don't start off good. I look back at the. I mean,
nobody starts off good at anything, really. You know, like,
yeah. Thinking back on some of the decisions I made at the start of Hellscapes, I was just like, oh god, that was so stupid.
Yeah, well, because you don't know what's wrong until you've done the thing wrong, and then you see the bad results of doing it incorrectly, and you go, that's why nobody does it that way.
Literally. There was some stuff where you go, damn, I cooked. But other times you're like, God, that was so bad.
Yeah. Every once in a while, you have the right instinctive idea for a thing. That happens. And people have the right instinctive ideas for different elements of the game that you're running. But yeah, you can't know. It's pretty hard to know. I mean, it's true of anything. It's hard to know what the fuck up, or it's hard to know why people do a thing in a very specific way until you try a different way that seems logical, and then you realize, there is several reasons why this does not work out the way I thought it did, because you just didn't have that information.
I had a moment this previous thing where I feel like I cooked, and that's all that matters. Because I gave the players a monkey.
Okay.